I'll ask the competitors if they will to introduce themselves, and then we will give it about 2 more minutes to see if we get Mr. Furman in or not.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Carson Sadro, and I'm here alongside my co-counsel, Mr. Chance Stirrup. Today, we'll be representing the plaintiff, Jordan Street, in today's case.
All right.
And good afternoon, Your Honor. On behalf of the defendant, my name is Austin Wallach. That's W-A-L-L-I-C-K. And I'm joined today by my co-counsel, Ms. Zua Zhao.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Zua Zhao. That's Z-H-A-O.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Zhao. Like I said, I said we'd give Mr. Furman until 2:05, so we're going to give him just a couple of more minutes, 3 or 4 maybe, and hope that he gets here with us. Would any of the other judges who will actually be making decisions in this, if you'd like to introduce yourself, feel free to do so. If not, that's up to you.
I'll say hello. My name is Wesley Lotz, and I'm here in Houston, Texas, with a firm called Fulkerson Lotz LLP. I've been practicing business litigation for about 15 years.
My name's Will Thomas. I'm an attorney also down in Houston, Texas, with a firm called McDowell Hetherington. Been practicing business litigation for, I guess, going about 8 years now.
My name's Kurt Metcher. I live and practice in Austin, Texas for a small firm called Thomas Williams McConnell. I've been practicing for about a year. We do primarily trial work.
And anybody else?
My name is Barbara Pelaez. I am been an attorney for 9 years now. I live in Dallas, Texas, and I work at Quinteros, Prieto, Wood, and Boyer. I've practiced mostly or entirely defense, civil defense, personal injury, med mal, negligence, and I am a trial attorney.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Of course, we are not allowed to know where you all are from, neither your school nor your homes, so we will not be asking you about that. This is quite the competition. As I said, this is my 11th journey into it. It's one of a kind. Used to be that only the top gun got the money, and now thanks to one of our great firms here in Waco, Naaman House, Smith and Lee, used to be Naaman House, Smith, Lee and Muldrow. They provide the prize money, and they actually are now paying money, I think, to 4 places. So that will be very nice. We wish we had you here, but this is the way we are all practicing law. I had 7 hearings yesterday on Zoom, and YouTube Live would not work. And so luckily, my court's a court of general jurisdiction. I handle everything from what we call state jail felonies to capital murder, and then anything civil that 2 people can sue each other about is also within my purview. And so I have a very diverse docket. Well, we've gotten to 2:04. We're going to give it just a couple of seconds more. As you all know, you have a 5-minute limitation on your pretrial. I will be keeping the clock, unfortunately. We'll, since we're way down on manpower around here and trying to practice social distancing. And so we'll give it, like I said, about 30 seconds, and then plaintiff be ready to. All right, it's 2:05. Let's get started. Plaintiff, any pretrial?
Your Honor, we did have one pretrial matter that we wanted to address with co-counsel before trial began this morning. It was to exclude an exhibit of a handwritten note believed to be authored by Rory Street, the decedent in today's case. And both myself and opposing counsel have agreed that we will not be using that exhibit in today's case. And I just wanted to put Your Honor on notice that we had made that agreement prior to trial beginning today.
All right.
Your Honor, Excuse me, sorry.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, that's all from the plaintiff for pretrial matters today, but we would draw Your Honor's attention to Your Honor's pretrial order in
Yes.
which exhibits 17 and 18 have been pre-admitted into evidence and all objections have been waived.
Yeah, 17, 18, 16, 19, and 21 are pre-admitted.
Yes, Your Honor. And with that, the plaintiff is ready to proceed.
Anything by the defendant on pretrial?
Yes, Your Honor. Again, good afternoon. My name is Austin Wallach, here for the defendant, Reese Taylor. Your Honor, before I get into the substantive matter that I have today, if it's all right with you, I'd like to just ask a few of your preferences for how we proceed, given this somewhat unusual digital environment.
Yes.
Um,
Give me just a second. I'm not counting this against you, Mr. Furman. I didn't see you join us to start with. Plaintiff had nothing other than an announcement on pretrial that they had agreed to exclude one piece of possible evidence, and now the defense is taking up their pretrial.
Thank you, Judge. I'm going to put myself on mute.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Now, Your Honor, as I was saying, given the somewhat unique nature of this digital trial, do you have any preference as to whether we stand or sit at any point in trial today, or may we do so at our discretion?
You can just do so at your discretion since the nature of what we're doing.
Yes, Your Honor. Additionally, there are 22 exhibits on the record in this case, and they're marked for identification purposes as 1 through 22. We just ask that they retain those markings if at any point they're entered today.
Yes.
To that end, Your Honor, as was mentioned, certain exhibits, specifically 16 through 19 and Exhibit 1, have been pre-admitted. If we intend to publish these at any point, would you still like us to ask beforehand, or may we freely publish when something has been admitted?
No, those, whatever that is, 5 or 6 exhibits, you can refer to freely.
Yes, Your Honor. Finally, I've created a PowerPoint presentation that I intend to use during my opening statement today. I've shown that to opposing counsel, and as I understand, she has no objection to me using that. I just wanted to make sure that the court was okay with that before I go ahead.
If there's no objection to it, I'm fine with it.
Yes, Your Honor. With that, I am ready to get into that substantive motion. Now, as a brief way of background, Your Honor, this is a case in which the plaintiff has brought a wrongful death action against my client, Coach Reese Taylor, for the wrongful death of her daughter. The plaintiff claims that it was the actions taken by the defendant on September 7th, 2018, namely in pushing her daughter too hard at a soccer practice under extreme conditions, that led to the decedent's death. It's our contention today that Ms. Street died not because of the conduct of the defendant, but sadly because Ms. Street ingested cocaine before practice the day that she passed, and that it was that cocaine, along with the heat and the exertion of the soccer practice, that caused her untimely death. Now, our only motion is to exclude subsequent remedial measures that were taken by the school and by the coach after Ms. Street died. Namely, that they installed tents on the property and they began providing Gatorade to all players at that point. I've already spoken to opposing counsel. She's agreed she doesn't intend to elicit this testimony unless the door is opened. But I just wanted to put Your Honor on notice that that testimony won't be brought up today.
Any response by the plaintiff?
No, Your Honor, we were happy to agree pre-trial to that, and we agree that we're not going to go into any subsequent remedial measures taken by Waco High School in this case.
All right.
Then with that, Your Honor, the defense is ready to proceed with opening statements.
All right. Then the plaintiff has the right to open. So this time we will proceed with opening statements. You have 55 minutes, counsel.
May it please the court? Choices and consequences. It's September 7th, 2018. Rory Street is getting ready to head into her high school soccer practice. As she steps outside and gets ready to leave, she notices it's hot. It's going to be one of those Texas scorchers, and she expects that practice is going to be rough. She knows that her coach, Taylor, well, she expects a win this year. Rory's kind of nervous because she thinks that her coach, Reese Taylor, is going to take it hard on her during practice. You'll find out today that she was right. When Rory arrived to practice and began running those drills, she noticed something was off. Normally a star athlete, she wasn't able to complete these normal drills. She was slagging, she wasn't running as fast. But Coach Taylor, the defendant, well, she didn't like that. You see, the defendant demanded perfection. The defendant expected more. This was Coach Taylor's field, and she was in control. Off days, well, those just aren't an option. So Rory tried her best. And you'll learn today that practice, it didn't start off so bad. It started out with something called a Burma Road drill. It's kind of like running suicides on a basketball court. And Rory had run it before, but this time she wasn't able to keep up. She was pushing herself harder, but every time she pushed farther, she failed. You'll learn today that as Rory wasn't doing that drill like the defendant expected, the defendant was getting angrier. And the defendant made a choice. The defendant chose to punish Rory, to teach her a lesson she wouldn't forget. You're going to learn today that Coach Taylor, the defendant, decided to do something called run a slide tackle drill. Now, Your Honor, slide tackles aren't unusual to soccer. They happen most every game. It's when another player sneaks up behind the player with the ball and tries to kick the ball out from under them. It can even be normal in some circumstances for coaches to run a drill of slide tackles at practice. What you're going to learn today is that the defendant, well, she ran these drills a little bit differently. You're going to learn today that as Rory was struggling, Coach Taylor thought of the perfect way to teach Rory a lesson. Rory, go. Get on the sidelines. Oh, okay, Coach. Rory goes over to the sideline, sets up the ball at her feet, ready to dribble when she looks up and she sees it. Her entire team of 15 other girls is standing in front of her. She hears her coach give the order for these girls to attack her, to kick her, to put their cleat into her chin, to cause her pain. But Rory does what she's told. Okay, Coach. She starts dribbling the ball down the field when she hears the defendant's whistle blow. She braces for the impact that she knows is coming when her teammate comes up behind her, kicks her legs out from under her. Rory is thrown back on her back onto the field. The wind is knocked out from under her. She's struggling to get up. But she wants to try. She knows she has to do well at practice, so she's trying to get back up off the ground when she feels a hand on the back of her jersey. Again, get up. You'll learn that Coach Taylor yanked her off of the ground and told her to go back to the sidelines. Okay, Coach, I'll go. Rory goes back to the sidelines. She puts the ball at her feet again. Again, she starts dribbling when she hears the coach's whistle, and she braces for impact one more time. She's again hit by her teammate, knocked on her back, the wind knocked out of her, trying to get up, when she feels that same hand on her back. I said again, Okay, Coach. Rory's body begins to fail. What you're going to learn today is that the defendant didn't stop that exercise. The defendant ordered Rory to be tackled to the ground by her teammates again and again and again and again. He had her teammates tackle her to the ground 15 times. Rory lines up on the sideline for the 15th time. She's tired. Her body can barely move. But she does what she's supposed to do. She starts dribbling the ball, moving a little bit slower. She hears that whistle blow. The teammate comes back and knocks her to the ground. The wind gets knocked out of her for a 15th time. But this time, she can't breathe. Her heart stops working. Everything goes black. You learn Rory didn't get up. Rory Street died on that field. That's why we're here today. We're here because the defendant looked an 18-year-old child in the eye and said, "I'm going to teach you a lesson you won't ever forget." The defendant made a choice to punish his athletes, but it was Rory who suffered the consequences. That's why Jordan Street, Rory's mother, has sued the defendant for a negligence action under wrongful death. Now, that means we have to prove a couple of things to you today. It means we have to prove to you that Coach Taylor owed a duty to Rory, that she breached that duty, that breach caused Rory's death. And we have to prove all of that to you by what's called a preponderance of the evidence. It simply means more likely than not. And to do that, we're going to call a couple of witnesses. You're going to be able to hear from a girl named Aubrey Saracen. Now, Aubrey was Rory's best friend. They grew up playing soccer together, and we expect that Aubrey's going to be able to tell you what that day of practice looked like. She's going to be able to tell you how the defendant was behaving. She'll tell you about the choices she saw the defendant make and how she watched her best friend die. And you're going to be able to hear from Rory's mother, Jordan, in the form of a deposition. Now, Miss Street is going to be able to tell you all about Rory and how she wanted to go play soccer after high school. She had never had any health problems before. How she didn't expect what was going to happen on September 7th. Now, the defense, they don't bear a burden in today's case. They don't have to put up a single witness, but if they do, we expect you might hear that when Rory passed away, they found cocaine in her system. And members of the jury, remember that Rory was a high school student. High school students make mistakes. But we expect you're also going to hear from a medical doctor in today's case. And that medical doctor is going to be able to tell you it wasn't the cocaine that caused Rory's death. It was her coach. Now, throughout today's trial, I want you to ask yourself a couple of questions. One, who was in control that day? Whose choice was it to punish Rory? And who had to suffer the consequences? Your Honor, at the end of today's case, we are confident that you will see that the defendant's choices led to Rory Street's death. That's why at the end of today's case, I'm going to come before you again and ask that you find the defendant liable. Thank you.
Defense?
Yes, Your Honor. May I have a brief moment to set up?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. May I proceed?
Yes.
Now, Your Honor, from the second that both parties walked into this courtroom today, there was actually a lot that we agreed on. We agree that Miss Street's death is a tragedy. We agree that she died during a soccer practice on a hot September day 2 years ago. We even agree that she died from heat exhaustion. But Your Honor, what we don't agree on, and what the evidence is going to show today, is that Miss Street's death, it wasn't caused by the defendant, Coach Reese Taylor. This case, it is about choices and consequences, but it's not about his as much as it's about hers. That's because in this case, what no one saw, that's what killed her. Now, it's the afternoon of September 7th, 2018. As the Waco High School girls varsity practice team laces up their cleats in the locker room before an afternoon practice, Rory Street, she has a secret. Earlier in the day, without telling anyone, she had tried cocaine. That's a very dangerous drug, and she just tried it for the first time. As cocaine courses through her veins, she runs out onto that soccer field with the rest of her team. She starts feeling a little bit funny, but all in all, she's ready to practice. Now, the first hour of that practice, it goes by with really no issue. The team, they take their break, and the coach notices that Rory is starting to goof off. Now, just like any other time that she goofs off, Coach Taylor makes her practice extra hard and run on what's called Burma Road. Even after running sprints on Burma Road and bear crawling back, Miss Street, she's still slacking. So that's when Coach Taylor lines up the team to practice slide tackles on her. Now, any other day, any other practice, Rory Street would have been fine. She was a soccer superstar. Some of her teammates and her coaches said that she had superhuman abilities. But on this particular day, it was her secret, that cocaine that no one saw, that is what killed her. And that's important today because, as the plaintiff mentioned, they have the burden of proof in today's case. They have to prove to Your Honor, by a preponderance of the evidence, that Coach Taylor not only owed Miss Street a duty of care, but that he should have seen Miss Street's death coming, that it was foreseeable. But Your Honor, you simply can't know what you can't see. And the plaintiff won't be able to meet their burden today. That will become clear through the use of three main points in trial today. First, the secret. Second, the effect. And third, the silence. Now, keeping all of those in mind today, let's turn to that first point, the secret. Rory Street was a star soccer player. Like I said, she was a superstar athlete with abilities that far surpassed the rest of her teammates. She was rarely ever in trouble. She was, by all accounts, a great kid. The evidence will show that nothing that Miss Street ever did led her coach to think that she was troubled. Nothing led that coach to believe Miss Street would abuse drugs. Nothing about what Miss Street did or what she put in her body on September 7th of 2018 was foreseeable to her coach, Reese Taylor. And that's why on September 7th, 2018, Coach Taylor treated Miss Street just like she would any other athlete on any other day. She pushed her. She made her work hard and do drills. Now, Your Honor, I'd like you to meet Coach Taylor a bit later in trial today. We'll have her take the stand so she can tell you exactly what she did on the day in question. But some of the things you'll learn about her is that she's been coaching varsity soccer at Waco High School for about 7 years now. She's dedicated to her players. She pushes them to always play harder and to do better. But unfortunately for Coach Taylor, what she didn't know, what she could not have possibly known, is what ultimately led to the death of Rory Street. Now, as the defense, I want to make something perfectly clear right up front about Coach Taylor's behavior. You're going to hear things about Coach Taylor that you might not like. You may not agree with how the coach conducted her practice that day, and we won't hide from the fact that she may have gone too far with several of these drills. But that in itself does not make her negligent, because Coach Taylor cannot be held responsible for the effects of something she could not have foreseen, known, or possibly even dreamt of. That Rory Street had secretly used cocaine that day. And Your Honor, that's what brings us to our second point, the effect. Now, we'll show you today that Miss Street had a significant amount of cocaine in her system. Even 4 hours after she had passed away, hours after that practice, her blood test showed that she had 60 nanograms per milliliter of cocaine in her system. And both the plaintiff expert and the defense expert agree on that fact today. That cocaine combined with the heat and the physical exertion is what caused her death. An expert report that has already been admitted by the court will show today that the heat, the exertion, and the recreational drug use, those things can all work together to increase the risk of heat exhaustion and heat stroke. For example, cocaine use can result in hyperthermia, which inhibits the body's natural cooling process. So if cocaine use is combined with the overexertion in extremely hot conditions, then the evidence will show it would exacerbate the risk of heat stroke. Simply put, while the actions of the defendant in this case may have played a role, Miss Street died not just because of those actions, but because of the things she had put in her body that day. Finally, that brings us to the third thing I'd like Your Honor to remember throughout trial today. The key fact that's so important, the silence. Even though Coach Taylor admittedly pushed Miss Street hard during practice that day, the evidence will show she had no reason not to. Miss Street, she had always been a tough player, a real athlete. Coach Taylor had no reason to believe that Miss Street was at an increased risk of heat stroke from drugs in her system, or that there would be any compounded effect based on things she had taken that day. Coach Taylor always made water available for the team at practice. They just had to ask. But the evidence will show Miss Street never did. Coach Taylor always let the players take breaks whenever they needed one. They just had to ask. Again, the evidence will show that Miss Street, she just never did. Her silence in this case guaranteed that Coach Taylor would never know that she needed a break or that she needed water. And it meant that Coach Taylor would push her just as hard as normal. But throughout trial today, it won't just be her silence that you'll hear about. Pay attention to the testimony of Miss Street's best friend, Aubrey Saracen, and you'll learn something interesting. Now, Miss Saracen was right there on the soccer field by her friend on that terrible day. And you'll note that the very next day, she made some admissions about that death. She said it was sudden, that it came out of nowhere, that she didn't see it coming. Her testimony today will leave you with the question, if her own best friend had no idea, didn't know that this was even a possibility, then how could her coach? Your Honor, today's case, it's no doubt a tragedy. The plaintiff, she lost a child. Her teammates lost a friend, and Coach Taylor lost a young talent that she hoped would one day become a superstar. But today, the plaintiff is going to ask that you find Coach Taylor liable for something that she did not see and did not possibly know, while ignoring the actions taken by the decedent, Miss Rory Street. The unfortunate truth is that what no one saw is what killed her. The cocaine that she put in her body is what caused her death, not a tough coach pushing her to do hard drills. As such, Your Honor, when I come to you again at the end of this trial today, I'll ask that you find the only verdict that's both supported by the evidence, more importantly, demanded by the law. A verdict of not liable.
First witness, plaintiff.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the plaintiff calls Aubrey Saracen to the stand.
One moment, I'm putting the video on.
All right.
May I proceed?
You can. You presume all witnesses are pre-sworn.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself to the judge?
Hi, my name is Aubrey Saracen.
How old are you, Aubrey?
I'm 18 years old.
And do you go to school?
Yes, Waco High.
Have you always gone there?
Yes,
Do you know someone named Rory Street?
I do.
How do you know Rory?
Rory was one of my closest friends. We went to school together and grew up together.
What did you and Rory like to do together?
We like to play soccer together.
And how long had you been playing soccer?
For as long as I can remember, honestly.
Could you tell us a little bit about what Rory was like?
Sure. Rory was one of a kind person. She was smart and tough and loved to always give her 100% on anything that she did.
And how was Rory as a soccer player?
She was amazing. Hands down the best player on the field.
Do you know if she had any scholarship offers?
Yes, I know she at least had one.
Now, what happened to Rory?
She died on the soccer practice field.
Could you tell us when that was?
Yeah, it was September 7th, 2018.
Let's back up for a moment. What did September 7th, what were you planning to do that day?
Well, we were planning to, have soccer practice and after that, get on with our homework. It was a typical day.
Now, what time of day was practice supposed to be?
It started around 3:30.
And what was the weather like?
It was hot, really hot.
And could you tell us where this practice was located?
It was behind the high school on the practice field.
If I showed you a picture of that practice field, would you recognize it?
I would.
Your Honor, since this is a bench trial, may I ask Your Honor's preference on whether you would like me to continue laying foundation before putting that exhibit on the screen, or would Your Honor prefer I go ahead and put the exhibit up and then lay foundation?
I think we probably ought to lay the foundation before we put it.
Yes, Your Honor. Aubrey, have you been able to review Exhibit 3?
Yes.
Could you tell us what it is?
It is an aerial view of the soccer field.
Does it look to be a fair and accurate representation of that soccer field?
It does.
Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff moves Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Resubmitted.
Now, Mr. Stirrup, could you please put Exhibit 3 up on the screen? Aubrey, could you tell us what we're looking at?
Sure. So the rectangle, the blue rectangle is is the practice field. And the red rectangle is where we would be taken to do any drills that Coach Taylor would do.
What box did you begin practice in on September 7th?
We began practice on the blue box, inside the blue box.
Did you ever go over to that red area on September 7th?
I did.
Why'd you go over there?
I wasn't doing well in practice according to Coach Taylor, so I was told to do Burma Roads.
What is Burma Roads?
Burma Roads is essentially is a form of punishment that we would do that Coach Taylor had us do, that required us to run 30 yards, and then we would dribble the ball for 30 more yards, shoot it into a goal, and then we would bear crawl the 60 yards back to the starting point.
And when you were doing these Burma Road drills, how many times would you have to go through that rotation?
We usually had to go as long as Coach Taylor told us to go. She was the one who told us to stop.
Now, as you were running Burma Road on September 7th, what do you remember?
I remember running Burma Roads and then hearing Coach Taylor yell loudly towards. It turned out that she was yelling at Rory.
Did you hear what Coach Taylor was yelling?
Yeah, she was complaining about the fact that Rory wasn't playing well, that she was missing, easy passes and wasn't in position. And so she told her, well, if you're not going to practice here, may as well go run Burma Roads until you pass out.
Now, from how far away were you from Coach Taylor and Rory?
I was about 20 yards.
And from where you were standing, could you see and hear them well?
Yeah, I could.
So when Coach sent Rory to run Burma Road, did the coach come watch you?
No.
Did the defendant send a trainer to come watch you?
No, there was no one there to watch me.
About how hot was it at this point?
It was still really, really hot. I'm pretty sure we were in the hundreds.
You said Rory came over. Did she start doing the Burma Road drills with you?
She did, yes.
And what, if anything, did you notice about Rory when she was doing those drills?
Rory did not look herself at all. I mean, she was really pale. She wasn't running the drill as fast as she probably would have. And she just was bent over, hands on her hip, sweating, just not her usual self at all.
Did she say anything to you about how she was feeling?
Yeah, she told me that she was feeling funny and that she felt some pain in her chest.
What happened after Rory told you that?
Well, as soon as she told me that, Coach Taylor started yelling at her again. I guess she had looked over and saw Rory not playing or not running to her as fast or whatever. And so she stopped the entire scrimmage and made her do this new drill. Yeah.
What was that new drill she made Rory do?
Essentially, she stopped and had the entire team line up on the practice field in the middle. And then she told Rory to come over there, and she lined her up about 10 yards away from the center field facing team. And she told the team that they were going to be running at Rory, trying to do what this defensive drill called slide tackle against Rory while she was dribbling the ball towards them. And that's what it was. It was a type of drill.
Could you tell us a little bit more about what a slide tackle looks like?
Sure. So slide tackle is essentially it's a defense type of position. Basically, what you do is you are going towards the dribbler of the ball, and you kind of slide down to your body on the grass to try to get at the ball and get the ball away from the dribbler, from the offensive player.
And had you ever seen the defendant run this drill before?
Not like this, no, definitely not.
Well, what was different about this one?
The difference was that Rory was the only one doing the drill, essentially. So it was against the rest of the team against her.
As Rory was lining up for this drill, could you see what she looked like?
Yes, I was still on the field doing the Burma Roads, but I had stopped and I saw that she still looked pale. She looked lifeless, honestly. It was really hard to watch.
Now, Aubrey, did you tell your coach anything about what you were seeing?
I didn't.
Why not?
We knew better not to. Coach Taylor, her practice methods let us, kind of guess. Like if we said anything about how tired we were, she would just make us do another drill. She'd just punish us more.
So can you tell us what happened when this slide tackle drill started?
So Rory lined up as instructed by Coach Taylor, and she went through the first time with the first player went at her, and Rory fell. And before she could even get up, Coach Taylor came and pulled her up from her shirt, put it on her feet, and told her, go again. And so she got back into the starting position, and she dribbled the ball again and went to the second player.
How long did this go on for?
Rory did this drill against 15 different players.
How many times was Rory knocked to the ground?
Every time.
What happened after the 15th time, Aubrey?
After the 15th time, once again, like I said, she was on the ground, but she didn't get up. She started convulsing. And once we saw that she wasn't getting up, they called the ambulance. And
what did you do?
I was in shock, honestly. I didn't know what else. I didn't know what to do. I just kind of stared. And that was the last time I saw my friend.
Now, Aubrey, I want to ask you a couple of questions about a text message you sent on September 8th, the next day. Do you remember sending that text message?
I do.
Do you remember if you talked about what happened during practice on September 7th?
Yeah, I do.
Well, what did you say happened?
I had said that I basically was just saying that, that Rory had fell all of a sudden, collapsed all of a sudden, and it was so hard to watch and everything.
What did you mean when you said all of the sudden?
I mean, I never imagined that, I would lose my friend at 17 years old in a place like the practice field.
Now, Aubrey, from the time that Rory started running Burma Road, did you ever see Coach Taylor give Rory a break?
No.
Was there any shade for Rory to go under?
No, there wasn't.
Did you ever see the coach give Rory water?
No.
Did she ever call the trainer over to check out Rory?
No.
Did she ever ask Rory if she was okay?
Not that I could recall, no, or see.
Now, Aubrey, in all of your years playing soccer, have you ever seen a coach put another player through the drills that Coach Taylor put Rory through?
No, not like that ever.
And when did the coach stop the slide tackle drill?
She didn't stop it until Rory was on the ground and couldn't get back up.
Thank you. Thank you, Aubrey. Your Honor, pass the witness.
Cross-examination, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Saracen, first, I want to go back and talk just a little bit about the relationship that you had with Miss Street, okay?
Okay.
Now, you said on direct you'd known her for years, right?
Right.
The two of you had, in fact, grown up together.
Correct.
You played soccer together.
Yes.
You went to school together.
Yes.
And when you weren't at her house, she was at your house, right?
Right.
Now, it's safe to say you two were incredibly close throughout your young lives.
Correct.
Now, you never saw her do cocaine at school, did you?
No.
You never saw her do cocaine at soccer practice, did you?
No, of course not.
In fact, you don't even think that Rory was the kind of person that would ever do drugs.
That's correct.
Ms. Saracen, when you walked onto the soccer field with her on September 7th of 2018, you had no idea that she had done cocaine that day.
No.
As far as you know, the trainer had no idea that she had done cocaine that day.
As far as I know.
To the best of your knowledge, Coach Taylor had no idea that she had done any cocaine that day.
No.
So unfortunately, Miss Street had been silent to all of you about her cocaine use that afternoon.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Your Honor, if I may respond, this is something that the witness can speak to from her rational perception, that the decedent had been silent about her cocaine use to the people that this witness observed.
May I respond to that, Your Honor?
Yes.
Yes, and Your Honor, I agree that that was counsel's previous line of questioning, but he just asked a new question in which he asserted that Rory told no one about her cocaine use. And that's asking the witness to speculate outside of her knowledge and experience.
You may ask the witness about her own personal experience, but as to any of others, that does call for speculation. Objection sustained.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Saracen, to be clear, at no point on September 7th of 2018 did Miss Street tell you she had used cocaine that day.
Correct.
Okay, so let's turn to the practice and ultimately what happened to Miss Street. Now, as you told us just a moment ago, you were there for the entire practice while Rory was too, right?
Right.
And you saw from a distance because Coach Taylor had made you start running Burma Road earlier on.
Yes.
And when you were running Burma Road, that wasn't a drill you were unaccustomed with, was it?
No, it wasn't.
This wasn't uncommon for Coach Taylor to make students run Burma Road.
Right.
Now, to the best of your knowledge, no one else had ever died running on Burma Road, right?
Best of my knowledge, yeah.
And when it came to the slide tackle drills that took place later that day, to the best of your knowledge, no one had ever died doing slide tackling at the school practices before, right?
I mean, that was the first time that drill was ever done. So, you know, I can't really say no one's ever, the one time that it did happen, someone did die.
But prior to that, to the best of your knowledge, no one had ever died doing that slide tackling drill or any other type of slide tackling drill, right?
Prior to that, no.
Now, let's talk about what went on while you were running Burma Road. You'd been there for approximately 15 minutes before Miss Street was sent over, right?
Correct.
And you did not take cocaine that day, did you?
No.
But while you were doing this strenuous exercise on Burma Road, you did not pass out, correct?
No.
When you were running on Burma Road and Rory was running there with you, that's when you noticed she was struggling.
Correct.
You told us on direct examination that Rory looked tired. She didn't look good, right?
Correct.
But this happened almost 2 years ago, right?
Yes.
And like you told us on direct examination, your testimony today, it's actually not the first time that you talked about what happened on September 7th, 2018.
That's correct.
You sent some text messages the very next day, didn't you?
I did.
And this was to your friend Wooderson, right?
Right.
Now, you would recognize a copy of those text messages if I were to show you them, right?
I would.
Do you have Exhibit 22 in front of you, Ms. Saracen?
I can get it up. Just a moment.
Please do. And let me know when you've got it up.
I have it up.
Okay, great. Now, if you can go ahead and take a look at that exhibit there, you would agree that you recognize it, right?
Yes.
That's the text message that you sent the very next day.
Yes.
And that text message, like I mentioned a moment ago, that's between you and your friend Wooderson.
Yes.
You would agree that that's a fair and accurate copy of the texts taken from your phone after September 8th, 2018.
Correct.
Your Honor, at this time, I offer Exhibit 22 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
22 submitted.
And may I publish, Your Honor?
You may.
Now, Ms. Saracen, if you can take a look at the text messages that are up on your screen now, your messages are the ones over to the right side in blue, aren't they?
Yes.
And Wooderson's are the ones on the left in white.
Yes.
So let's talk about when these texts were sent. You mentioned just a moment ago that this conversation, it did happen on September 8th, didn't it?
It did.
And this was less than 24 hours after your best friend had passed away.
Right.
Now, your friend asked you, hey, I heard about Rory. What the hell happened? Right?
Right.
And you said at that point, excuse me, you didn't say at that point that she looked tired or that she didn't look good, right?
Right.
What you did say is she collapsed out of nowhere.
That's right.
You even went so far as to say in a later message, it was just so sudden, right?
Wow.
1 minute, Rory was there, and the next minute, she was lying on the ground dying.
That's what I said, yes.
Thank you. Ms. Zhao, you can take that down now. Ms. Saracen, I do finally want to turn to what you and Ms. Street did during the practice in order to let the coach know that there was a problem that day. Now, when Coach Taylor started that slide tackle drill, you were still running Burma Road, right?
No, I had stopped.
You had stopped running Burma Road at that point, but you were still over on that side field, right? You were watching from roughly 20 yards away.
Yes.
But you would agree with me that you could still see and hear what was going on at that point.
Correct.
Now, at no point did you see Ms. Street tell Coach Taylor that she wasn't feeling well, did you?
No.
You never heard her say to either Coach Reese or the trainer that she was feeling under the weather or that she was sick or tired.
That's correct.
During that practice, you would agree there was water present, right?
Yes.
But at no point did you hear Ms. Street tell the coach that she needed water.
Correct.
And when she was called to do that slide tackle drill, you didn't hear her ask for a break at that point.
No.
In the middle of that drill, after she'd been knocked down several times, you never heard her ask for a break.
That's right.
Even in the middle of that drill, you never heard her ask for any water.
No.
And you would agree that kind of attitude, that toughness, that was typical of Rory, wasn't it?
Yeah,
She was a tough soccer player.
she was.
You recall once that she played an entire second half of a soccer game with a broken nose,
Right.
and she didn't complain one time,
That's correct.
which is why it doesn't surprise you that she didn't complain on September 7th, does it?
Yes, it doesn't surprise me.
Because Ms. Saracen, to use your own words here, her death was just so sudden, wasn't it?
Yeah, her dying was sudden. Correct.
Your Honor, I have nothing further. I pass the witness.
Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Now, Aubrey, counsel just asked you a couple of questions about those text messages you sent on September 8th, where you used the word sudden and you said she collapsed out of nowhere. Could you tell us what you meant when you said those things?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was another day at practice. She wasn't feeling well, but never in my mind did I think that the practice was going to go on to the point that she fell and collapsed and was out of my life for the rest of my life. That's what I meant when I said that it happened so sudden.
Now, he also just asked you about that Burma Road drill you were running and the practice you were going and the practice you were going through, and he asked you, and you said that you didn't pass out, right?
Right.
Aubrey, did Coach Taylor make you run the slide tackle drills?
No, she didn't.
Did Coach Taylor make you get hit to the ground 15 times?
No, she didn't.
Did Coach Taylor ever yank you up by the back of your jersey and tell you to go do it again?
No, she didn't.
Now, you also just talked, council also just asked you a little bit about those slide tackle drills, and you said that you've never, before September 7th, you've never seen anybody die from them before. Aubrey, could you tell us when was the first time you saw this slide tackle drill run?
On September 7th, 2018.
And what happened during the first time that Coach Taylor ran this drill?
My best friend died.
Thank you, Aubrey. Your Honor, I have no further questions for and pass the witness.
Any recross?
No, Your Honor. We're comfortable with this witness being excused.
All right. Next witness.
Excuse me, Your Honor, I didn't realize I was on mute. At this time, we're going to read on to the record certain portions of the deposition of Jordan Street, and I'm going to ask my co-counsel to assist me in reading those, if that's okay with Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am, that's fine.
All right. I'm going to start on page 2 at line 6. Good morning. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Jordan Street.
How old are you?
I'm 55 years old.
Where are you from?
I live in Waco and have all of my life.
Are you married?
I'm not. I was married, but my spouse passed away several years ago.
Do you have any children?
I did. My daughter, Rory.
I'm showing you what has been marked as Exhibit 3. Do you recognize this?
I do. That's a picture of my daughter.
Mr. Stirrup, could you also put up Exhibit 3? Is Exhibit 3 a fair and accurate depiction of Rory as he or she appeared on September 7th, 2018?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, we move Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, we have no objection, Your Honor.
Resubmitted.
What happened to Rory?
She died at soccer practice on September 7th, 2018.
Were you at practice that day?
No, I was at work.
Now reading from line 9, or excuse me, line 11, or excuse me, how old was Rory at the time of her death?
17 years old.
Was Rory in high school?
Yes.
Where did she go to high school?
Rory went to Waco High, just like me.
Did Rory participate in any sports?
Yes, she played varsity soccer for the school, and she also played soccer for a private traveling club. It was a team on the weekends. To be honest, that kid's life was pretty much soccer 24/7. Getting her to read a book was the hard part.
Well, when did Rory start playing soccer?
Oh gosh, when she was little, 4 or 5 years old, I went and signed her up to get her started with just being out and being athletic and being around other kids, but she took right to it and never looked back. Before you knew it, we were spending weekends driving all over Texas to soccer tournaments. And the next 12 years or so were just kind of a blur. Soccer tournaments, soccer practices, soccer camps, soccer everything.
Well, was Rory good?
Rory was a superb athlete. She had gotten several scholarship offers from Division I programs to play soccer in college, Southern Methodist University, Dallas Baptist University, Austin College, and the University of Texas at Dallas. They had all offered her a scholarship. It was so exciting to think about being able to watch her play at the top level in college against some of the best in the country. Plus, she would have gotten a great education. She had such a bright future, and I was excited to see it all play out.
Was soccer something that the two of you shared?
You know, I played soccer in college, so I already loved the game, but I didn't care what the sport was. I just loved having a kid that was into sports of any kind. I loved getting up on the weekends when she was little to go kick the ball around in the backyard and let her try to dribble it past me. I love talking about games and strategy. It brought back so many memories of my playing days, but this was even better because it was my kid and it made her so happy. By the time Rory was in high school, we even had a favorite team, West Ham United, that we would root on together every weekend during the English Premier League season. We loved going to T-Bone's barbecue to watch matches. I thought we would be forever blowing bubbles.
And what position did you play?
I was a starting striker, loved it.
Do you still play like in local non-competitive matches?
No, I had to quit my junior year of college because I had a pretty serious injury during a game. An opposing player slide tackled me from behind and broke my leg and ankle in several different places. I could have played my senior year, but I just wasn't as good as I used to be, and I decided not to continue. I enjoyed playing with Rory while she was young, though.
Now reading from page 6, line 4. Did you have to stay on top of Rory to make sure she was practicing and keeping up with exercising?
Not any more than any other parent of a teenager. Rory sometimes wanted to goof off instead of following Coach Taylor's non-practice exercise routines, and I would have to remind her of what soccer means for college and maybe a pro career.
Now reading from page 7, line 8. Did Rory regularly visit her pediatrician?
At least once a year for a physical.
During any of those yearly physicals, were there any issues?
None. Rory had never had any serious medical issues, just normal kid stuff.
And you told us earlier that you've lived in Waco your entire life. Did you go to Waco High?
Yes, I did. I'm a Lion through and through.
And when you were at Waco High, did you play any sports?
I played soccer just like Rory, but we won a state championship while I was there.
When you were playing soccer at Waco, did you ever have to run Burma Road?
Hell yeah, I did. I remember doing that when we were dogging it, or if we weren't in the correct position or something, coach would send us off to run Burma Road. But I tell you this, none of my coaches ever made me or any other kid keep doing it when it was obvious we were exhausted. Discipline is one thing, but that is just dangerous.
Do you know what a slide tackle is?
Sure.
Are slide tackles part of the game of soccer?
Of course they are. Turn on any game, you're going to see players at every level performing slide tackles. That's part of the deal.
Are slide tackles violent?
They can be. I mean, it's soccer, so a lot of the injuries are pretend acting. But anytime you're running full speed and you slide feet first at another player's legs, that can be a dangerous situation.
Why are they dangerous?
I mean, I just mentioned breaking my leg in college from getting slide tackled. That was only a few minutes ago. Weren't you listening?
Yes, just looking for mechanics here. I'm not really sure what a slide tackle is.
Well, at the very basic level, you could collide with the player and trip them or knock them to the ground. And again, you're running fast, so that collision can be violent. Also, you're talking about leg-on-leg contact, so there's always a risk for a knee injury or an ankle injury or even broken bones. Look, I know what some people think about soccer, but it can be a very violent game at times.
Thank you. Your Honor, that concludes the portion of Jordan Street's deposition we'll be reading onto the record, and we pass the witness.
Your Honor, we have nothing further to read from that deposition onto the record.
Your Honor, we do have one final thing to bring to the court's attention. May I proceed with that? Your Honor, before we close our case in chief, we'd like to direct Your Honor's attention to the previously admitted exhibit number 17. This is the CV of Dr. Reagan McConaughey, and it notes that since 2010, Reagan McConaughey, the doctor that conducted an analysis of Rory Street's death, served as the chief of cardiology at McLennan County Memorial Hospital in Waco, Texas. And it notes that Dr. McConaughey graduated from the Baylor College of Medicine with an MD. And prior to that, she attended Baylor University and received her BS in biology and in chemistry. It also notes that she's board certified in cardiology by the American Board of Internal Medicine and board certified in internal medicine by the American Board of Internal Medicine. Your Honor, we'd also like to read in certain portions of Exhibit number 17, the expert report of Dr. Reagan McConaughey. Your Honor, in her report, Dr. McConaughey on page 2 noted that Rory Street died as a result of heat exhaustion and/or heat stroke. And she told us that the major symptoms of heat exhaustion and/or heat stroke are as follows, particularly with attention to red or pale skin, weakness, nausea, muscle and abdominal cramps, fatigue, profuse sweating, and seizures. And Your Honor, on the following page where she concluded her findings, she said that Rory Street's pale skin, apparent weakness, potential dizziness, which is indicated by the fact that she felt funny and fell down on multiple occasions, fatigue, which is again indicated by continually falling down and struggling, potential abdominal pain, which is indicated by the groaning, and a rapid heartbeat, which is indicated by the chest pain, are all symptoms that are commonly associated with heat exhaustion and/or a heat stroke. Additionally, the description of Rory lying on the ground and convulsing is consistent with a seizure, which is a sign of heat stroke. Additionally, there are several findings in the autopsy report that are consistent with heat exhaustion and/or heat stroke. First, the autopsy report indicates that Rory Street had a cerebral edema. Cerebral edema is when fluid builds up around the brain, causing an increase in pressure known as intracranial pressure, which then leads to swelling and inflammation of the brain. Cerebral edema is often caused by and is completely consistent with heat exhaustion and/or heat stroke. And then, Your Honor, finally, Dr. McConaughey noted that based on all of the above, it is my opinion with a reasonable degree of medical certainty that Rory Street died as a result of heat exhaustion and/or heat stroke on September 8th, 2018. It is also my opinion within a reasonable degree of medical certainty that Rory Street's death was not a result of cocaine use. Your Honor, at this time, that concludes our reading in of the portions of those exhibits from Dr. McConaughey, and we would rest our case in chief.
Your Honor, before the defense proceeds into their case in chief, may I be heard briefly on a motion for a judgment as a matter of law in this case? Your Honor, I believe you might still be muted.
Proceed.
Thank you. Now, Your Honor, pursuant to Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 50, the defense moves for a judgment as a matter of law, even viewing all facts and inferences in the light most favorable to the non-moving party. No reasonable fact finder could find in favor of the plaintiff. In order to meet their burden today, the plaintiff had to prove proximate cause, meaning cause which, in a natural and continuous sequence, produces an event and without which cause such an event would not have occurred. Further, the act that caused Ms. Street's death had to be foreseeable. Now, Your Honor, Coach Reese Taylor did not cause Ms. Street's death because what no one saw is what actually killed her. Although you didn't hear live testimony from the expert witnesses, both of their reports have been pre-admitted, as counsel noted just a moment ago. And both experts agree in their reports that Ms. Street died from heart failure and that cocaine was found in her bloodstream. Spencer London, the defense expert whose report you do have access to in this case, indicates that Ms. Street's heat stroke and cardiac arrest was caused, at least in part, by the cocaine in her blood. Since Ms. Street kept that cocaine use a secret, Coach Taylor had no way of knowing that she was at an increased risk, and as such, this death was in no way foreseeable to him. As such, we ask that the court grant this motion as judgment for a matter of law.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. Viewing this motion in light most favorable to the non-moving party, which is the plaintiff in this case, there is enough evidence in the record to suggest that the defendant breached her duty of care and that breach was the cause of Rory Street's death. Your Honor, we just heard testimony from Dr. McConaughey in which she found that based on her opinion, Rory Street died as a result of a heat stroke. That's certainly enough evidence that a reasonable juror could find that we've met our burden. But more importantly, in your Honor's own jury instructions, you've noted that proximate cause, or that there can be more than one proximate cause. And the important thing about what opposing counsel just said was that the other experts said that cocaine may have played some part in Rory's death. Not that it was the only reason. And there might be more than one proximate cause out there, but we've certainly put enough evidence in the record to suggest that one of the proximate causes were the actions of Coach Taylor, and that those actions caused Rory Street's death. And therefore, at this time, we do not believe that a judgment as a matter of law would be appropriate.
The motion is denied. We are a comparative negligence state, and we'll proceed. I did not intend to take any breaks in this matter, but unfortunately, being still a working judge, I have a call concerning a warrant issue. So I don't intend to be gone more than about 2 minutes. But if you can do something in about 120 seconds, you're free to do it. And I will be back just as quickly as I can. All right. I'm going to trust that all of our scoring judges are still with us. I'll give you all a time check. Plaintiff, you have 17 minutes and 38 seconds remaining. 16 minutes and 38 seconds. Defendants, you have 33 minutes and 9 seconds.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And actually, I was wrong. It's 17 minutes, 38 seconds. All right. Is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor. But before we call any witnesses today, I'd actually like to read onto the record a highlighted portion of Exhibit 18. That's the report of the defense expert today. And this exhibit has already been pre-admitted via your pretrial order. I'd just like to read 2 sections and highlight them for Your Honor, if that's acceptable to you.
You may proceed.
May I publish? Thank you. Now I'm turning to the second page of this document in the section that's titled Overview of Opinions. In relevant part, this section reads, Rory Street's death was caused, at least in part, by the use of cocaine. And below that, there's a table that lists some of the symptoms that can be found associated with cocaine use. They are constricted blood vessels, dilated pupils, nausea and vomiting, raised body temperature and blood pressure, fast or irregular heartbeat, tremors and twitches, restlessness, and chest pain. With that, Your Honor, I'm now prepared to call our first live witness, the defendant in this case, Reese Taylor.
All right, let's bring him up.
Ms. Taylor, are you present?
Sorry. Yes.
Hello, Ms. Taylor. Your Honor, may I proceed with direct examination? Please introduce yourself to the court.
Yes. Hi, I am Reese Taylor.
And how old are you, Ms. Taylor?
I am 48 years old.
Where do you live?
I currently live in Waco, Texas. It's where I grew up, and I've lived here my whole life except when I was in college.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to Texas A&M University in College Station.
And what did you study while you were at Texas A&M?
I studied physical education. That was the degree they told me I needed to obtain to be a coach.
What was it that made you want to be a coach?
I mean, I've played sports my entire life. I played sports in high school. And so I really value what coaches bring to students' lives. I really think that they are a big part of development and discipline in people and how they end up turning out as adults. And so I really wanted to instill that in students and be an impact as well.
So where do you coach currently?
I currently coach at Waco High School.
And how long have you been at Waco High School?
I've been at Waco High School for 6 full seasons now.
Now, you said 6 full seasons. What sport, what team are you coaching there?
I'm coaching the varsity soccer team.
Now, having coached so long, Coach Taylor, do you take any steps in order to protect your players?
Yes, of course.
Specifically, what precautions are taken to make sure that your players are safe during practices that you hold?
Yes, so during our practices, we always have water available to our student athletes. We do allow them to take breaks in order to maintain their ability on the field. And we also always have our athletic trainer at practice.
Now, you just mentioned you have an athletic trainer. Who is that?
Our athletic trainer is Jess Merriweather.
And do you know what kind of training Miss Merriweather has?
I do. I believe it is a master's in athletic training. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that's her degree.
Now, what exactly is Miss Merriweather's role as a trainer in your program?
So as a trainer in our program, she's our team's athletic trainer. So that entails taking care of our players' physical injuries, as well as any other injuries that they may occur, if they break a bone or they need their ankle wrapped. And in the weeks after an injury, she continues taking care of them to make sure they're able to play and perform while they're recovering.
Now, if a player does sustain an injury at practice or otherwise, how do they go about seeking treatment from Miss Merriweather?
So the students, if they are in pain, they will ask to go see her. I'll allow them to go over there. Or if I notice that they're injured and they need attention, I will also send them over there.
Okay, now, Coach Taylor, I want to talk a bit about this case more specifically. Do you know that the plaintiff has brought this lawsuit against you for the death of her daughter?
Yes, I do.
And do you know who the decedent was in this case?
Yes, I do.
Who was it?
That was Rory Street.
What sort of relationship did you have with Miss Street?
So we had a normal coach-player relationship. I'm very close with all of my players generally, and she was one of my best athletes. So I pushed her, and I really wanted her to become the best athlete she could. But it was definitely a respectful relationship.
You just mentioned that you pushed her to be the best athlete that she could. Did you push her particularly hard on September 7th, 2018?
I wouldn't say particularly hard. I wanted her to be pushing herself to her full potential, and I didn't feel she was doing that, but not any harder than I'd ever pushed her before.
Now, when she was at practice with you on September 7th, 2018, did you know beforehand that she was starting to overheat that day?
No, I had no idea.
Had you have known that she was overheating, would you have allowed her to continue practicing?
No, absolutely not. I would have had her stop.
Okay, let's talk a bit more about your knowledge of Miss Street as an individual. Now, you said that you two had a good coach-student relationship. At any point, did you know that she was using cocaine?
No, I had no idea.
Did you know at any point on September 7th during that practice that she had cocaine in her system?
No, I had no idea.
Had you ever known her to use drugs?
No, I did not.
Now, if you had found out prior to that practice that she was using drugs, would you have allowed her to practice?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Coach Taylor, I want to talk about the day in question specific to the activities that occurred at that practice. Now, how was Miss Street's performance on the field that day?
She was definitely not playing to her full potential as I had known her to do. She was kind of dogging it, slacking off. She missed some easy passes and didn't really set up the plays like she normally did. She wasn't getting the ball in the best position. So I sent her to run Burma Road.
Now, we heard a bit about that earlier, but just from your perspective, can you tell us what Burma Road is?
Yeah, so Burma Road is a disciplinary drill that has been in place at Waco High School for decades. I ran Burma Road when I played high school soccer for Waco as well, so it's been around as long as I've known it. And it's just where we really want the players to get back into the focus and the discipline of the practice. So we'll send them and they sprint 30 yards and then they dribble the ball for 30 yards, make a shot on an open goal, and then bear crawl back, just to kind of refocus.
And how long do players typically do this for? Is it one and done, or does it go on for a while? What's the procedure?
It usually just depends on the player. It's however long it takes them to get that focus back. Usually it's about 10 minutes that they're over there until they're recentered and ready to rejoin the group.
Now, when Miss Street was running on Burma Road that day, did she seem overly exhausted to you?
No, she did not.
At any point, did she ask you to stop and take a break?
No, she didn't ask for that.
At any point when she was running Burma Road, did she ask if she could have some water?
No, she did not.
Coach Taylor, did she do anything while running Burma Road to indicate to you that she was overheating?
No, she never indicated to me at all.
Had she indicated that to you, or had she asked for breaks, what would you have done?
I would have given her breaks. I would have had her stop practicing until she felt well enough to start again. I would not have had her continue.
Now, did her performance improve from running Burma Road that afternoon?
No, so she was still goofing off and messing around, dogging it with Burma Roads. So I had her run in a different drill to try to get her recentered and focused on practice.
Can you describe that drill for us, please?
Yeah, so that was the slide tackle drill where I had her dribbling a ball down the field and her teammates attempting to slide tackle the ball away from her.
And at any point when you had her doing this drill, did she ask you if she could take a break?
No, she did not.
At any point during this drill, did she ask you if she could have water?
No, she did not.
At any point, did she indicate to you that she needed to see the trainer?
No, she never indicated that.
Had she said any of those things during this slide tackling drill, what would you have done?
I would have stopped the slide tackling drill and had her go sit with Miss Merriweather, had her sit out, had her recover. I would not have had her continue doing the drill.
Coach Taylor, in all of your years of coaching varsity soccer at Waco High School or coaching anywhere else, has anyone to your knowledge ever died running Burma Road?
No.
In all of your years of coaching, have any of your players died doing any of your drills?
No, they have not.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have nothing further at this time. I pass the witness.
May proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Miss Taylor, you've been a coach for about 20 years, right?
A little longer than that, but yeah.
And during that time, you've coached youth soccer.
Yes.
And as part of coaching, will you run the practices?
Yes,
You coach games.
I do.
You attend things like coaches' conferences.
I did.
And you actually attended a coaching conference in June of 2018, right?
Yes.
That was about 3 months before Rory died.
Yes.
And at that conference, there was a presentation where they went over the rules and the guidelines for practicing out in the Texas heat, right?
Something like that, yeah.
You learned that the High School Soccer Association, well, they recommend water breaks every 15 minutes.
They recommend that, yes.
They also recommend providing shade.
They do have that recommendation.
They recommend that your practices don't run for longer than 2 hours.
That was also one of their recommendations, yes.
Now, they also gave a presentation about slide tackling, right?
I believe so.
And they reminded everybody that slide tackling can be dangerous,
I mean, yeah,
that it can cause severe physical injury to the players.
it can.
that you should only do it when absolutely necessary.
Sure, that was their belief.
Okay. Now, as a coach, you understand that it's your job to monitor these players, right?
Yes, and I do that.
Your job to keep them safe,
Yes,
to not put them in danger,
correct.
to keep them out of harm's way.
Yes,
Now, on September 7th of 2018, you were holding a practice for your team at Waco High, right?
I was.
And prior to that day beginning, you're aware that it was hot outside.
Yes, it's hot like it is on every September day in Texas every year that I coach.
Right, and on this day, the temperature was over 100 degrees.
As per usual, yes.
Now, you know from that coaches conference we just talked about a minute ago that when it goes over 100 degrees, you have to give your players water breaks every 15 minutes, right?
That was their recommendation, but I have recommendations from a lot of organizations, so.
So you didn't follow the recommendation of the Texas High School Soccer Association on September 7th, did you?
I don't recall the exact timing of when I gave my players breaks, so I can't answer that.
You didn't give them any breaks on September 7th, did you?
I don't recall. I usually give my players breaks, but I can't remember.
Okay, well, then the association recommends that you limit your practice to 2 hours long, right?
That is their recommendation, yes.
On September 7th, your practice went well over 2 hours, didn't it?
I don't recall it being longer than 2 hours.
Well, you started at about 3 p.m., right?
We started after school. It was after 3 p.m., but I don't recall the exact time.
And several hours later, Rory died.
I don't recall the exact time.
Okay. Well, they tell you that another thing you're supposed to do in that kind of heat is provide your players with some shade.
That is one of the recommendations.
You didn't do that on September 7th, 2018, did you?
No, we practice on the field provided by the Waco McLennan County School District, and so I don't have control over my facilities, but we use what we're given. We try.
And so that's a no to my question. You didn't provide your players with shade on September 7th, right?
Right. The school district does not have shade on our field.
And you do this specifically because you want to make sure your players are tough.
No, that's not specifically why I do that.
Well, in your own words, you have them practice out in this heat to get them game ready.
Yeah, the games are in really hot weather, so we do have them practice in similar conditions. But that's not the sole reasoning for why we practice at the field at the high school or why our facilities are the way they are.
Well, let's talk about then what actually did happen on September 7th. Rory Street was at practice.
Yeah,
And in your own words, you thought Rory was dogging it.
I did.
You said she wasn't listening.
She wasn't.
She was goofing off.
Mm-hmm.
And you also said you observed something different about Rory that day.
Yeah, she wasn't putting in the effort she normally does.
And because Rory was acting different out in that 100-degree heat, well, you sent her to run Burma Road.
I did.
And now Burma Road is a punishment for these players, right?
No, it's a disciplinary to train you for discipline purposes.
Well, you would agree with me in your own words, you use Burma Road as a punishment.
I know it's a discipline. I use it for discipline. I don't recall exactly using the word punishment, but sure.
Okay, so you thought Rory needed to be punished on September 7th.
I thought she needed to be disciplined, yes.
And you sent her out to Burma Road, right?
I did.
And then after Burma Road, you had her come back and run slide tackle drills.
Yes.
And you decided, like Burma Road, to use the slide tackle drill like a punishment.
It's a disciplinary measure, yes.
You said that running this own drill, that was for Rory's own good.
Yes.
This was the first time you'd ever done this drill, right?
That specific drill, yes. We've done slide tackle drills before, but not that specific one.
That's right, Miss Taylor. You had never used this drill as punishment on a player before, had you?
No, I had never run this drill before.
Now, you had the entire team line up in front of Rory while she dribbled the ball towards them, right?
Yeah.
And that was for Rory's own good.
Yes.
You then had each player attack Rory by slide tackling her.
I'm not going to say attack. They weren't attacking her, but they did slide tackle while she was dribbling the ball. Yes.
And that was for her own good.
Yes.
You watched Rory collapse onto the ground over and over again.
She was performing the drill.
And she fell on the ground over and over again, didn't she?
I mean, she stumbled a few times, but I don't recall her falling over and over again.
So you're saying that when her teammates kicked her legs out from under her, she didn't fall over?
Not every single one of her teammates kicked her legs out from under her. Slide tackle drill is where you do slide tackle and you're going for the ball. Occasionally you hit their legs and you stumble, you recover. So I'm not going to say she didn't fall once or twice, but I don't recall her falling every single time.
Well, and when she did fall, well, that was for her own good.
Yes, because you get right back up again.
Now, you had Rory go through this drill 15 times.
Yes.
But on the 15th time, Rory collapsed and she didn't get up.
Correct.
Now, the decision to hold a practice in 100-degree heat, well, that was your choice, right?
Yes.
The decision to send Rory to Burma Road, that was your choice.
Yes, it was.
The decision to have your players repeatedly perform a slide tackle on Rory, that was your choice.
Yes.
Rory Street died during your drill.
She died during my practice, yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor. I pass the witness.
No redirect, Your Honor. May this witness be excused?
She may. Who next?
Your Honor, while I have no further live witnesses that will testify at this time, I would at this point like to read portions of deposition testimony from Jess Merriweather, the school trainer, onto the record. Ms. Merriweather has been stipulated by both parties in this case as being unavailable, and I have shown the portions that I intend to read to opposing counsel. I understand, at least it's my understanding, that she has no objections to that. So I just ask the court if you'll allow my co-counsel, Ms. Zhao, to turn on her camera so that I can read the questions and she read the answers.
That's fine. Proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning. Would you please state your name for the record?
Hello there. My name is Jess Merriweather.
How old are you, Jess?
I'm 28 years old.
Where do you live?
I live in Waco, Texas.
How long have you lived in Waco?
Just a couple years now. I grew up in Houston, then I went to Texas A&M for undergrad, and then I got a master's degree in sports training from A&M as well. After that, I worked for a couple years at another high school in College Station before I got the job at Waco High.
And what is your job at Waco High?
I'm an athletic trainer, and I also teach health.
What is the job of an athletic trainer at a high school?
We have various teams and activities at the school that involve some level of physical activity and competition. Everything from football to soccer to volleyball to cheerleading and drill team. As a trainer, I work with the students that participate in those activities to keep them healthy and in shape, and to treat any injuries that they may have.
Do you attend practices?
Yes, depending on what time of year it is, maybe football or soccer or something else, but there's always a trainer at any official practice for our various athletic teams.
How long have you been an athletic trainer?
About 2 years now.
And Your Honor, moving later into the deposition onto page 8, starting at line 8, were you at practice the day that Rory died?
I was.
Did you see Rory running Burma Road?
I saw Rory over on Burma Road, but I wasn't watching her closely.
Did you see Rory during the slide tackling drill?
Again, I saw that it was happening, and I certainly saw parts of it, but I didn't watch it closely.
What were you doing while all of this was going on?
I was taping another student's ankle about 40 yards away.
At any time, did you see Rory stumbling, faltering, or slowing down in a way that would have indicated she was in trouble?
No, not at all.
Was Rory sweating hard?
I mean, yes, but everyone was, including me. It was a really hot day.
Did Rory ever say anything to you about feeling bad that day?
Nope, never said anything to me. And here's the thing, I'm there to take care of those players and they know it. I'm kind of a combination trainer and guardian to the team. So they trust me and I trust them to tell me if something is wrong or if they're hurting. Rory didn't say a word, and she would have. Rory was a tough kid, but she knew her limits and would let me or coach know when she needed water.
Are players allowed to get water when they want it?
Yes, all they have to do is ask, even if we're not on a water break.
Your Honor, with that, we have no further deposition testimony that we'd like to read in from this witness. And at this time, the defense does rest its case in chief, and we renew our motion for judgment as a matter of law.
All right, that will be overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
Does the plaintiff have any questions of the witness who's on the stand?
We don't have any questions for that witness, Your Honor.
All right. Any rebuttal? Witnesses?
We do not have a rebuttal case in chief at this time, Your Honor. We are ready to proceed to closing.
All right. And you have exactly 9 minutes, and you may proceed at this time.
May it please the court. Choices and consequences. We learned today that on September 7th, 2018, Rory Street stood at the soccer field with a ball between her feet. She waited for the coach to blow the whistle. She started the slide tackle drill, anticipating her teammate coming up from her from behind. She was kicked, had her feet thrown out from under her, back onto her back where she couldn't catch her breath. We learned that Rory stood there bent over with her hands on her knees, wheezing and unable to breathe. We know that that's when the defendant blew her whistle again. We heard about how Rory pushed that ball forward one more time as fast as she could, but it wasn't fast enough for her coach. She got knocked down to the ground again. She was picked up by her jersey, and her coach said, again. Okay, coach. We know that Rory went back to that starting line 15 times. We know that every time she fell to the ground, her coach was there to pick her up. I said again. We know on the 15th time, something was different. Rory couldn't breathe. Her heart stopped pumping. She was seizing. Everything went black. Rory Street died on the defendant's field. She died because the defendant made a choice to punish her 18-year-old student for not working quickly enough. You know, it was Rory that had to suffer the consequences. At the beginning of today's trial, I asked you to think about 3 questions. Who was in control that day? What choice was it? Whose choice was it to punish Rory? Who had to suffer the consequences of that choice? Your Honor, at this point, it is clear that a child has been robbed of her life because of what happened on that field. Her life was taken from her. Jordan is left without a daughter because the defendant couldn't control her temper. because an 18-year-old high school student, well, she just wasn't working quickly enough for Coach Taylor. And we know what some of those choices the defendant made on September 7th that led to Rory's death. We know that she forced her players not just to practice in the heat, but that she did that unsafely. You heard today that 3 months prior to Rory's death, the defendant attended a conference where she learned that when you put your players out in the heat, you have to give them breaks, give them water, give them shade, let them rest. The defendant just got up on the stand and I asked her, well, did you do any of those things? Did you give your kids breaks? Did you make sure they were resting? No. And then she looked at you and she said, I didn't think it was necessary to follow those recommendations. So we just did things our own way. And then she decided that she wanted to punish Rory. She wasn't quite done. She didn't like the way Rory was performing in the scrimmage, and Rory needed to be taught a lesson. So she sent her out to Burma Road. She makes Rory run for 120 yards over and over and over again, but she doesn't stop there. She calls her back. She says, Rory, it's time to run some slide tackle drills. We heard from Aubrey Saracen that at this point, Rory was visibly exhausted. She couldn't breathe. She was pale. Her muscles were twitching. She was keeled over, struggling to put one foot in front of the other. And that's when the defendant thought it was a good moment to continue her punishment. That's the moment the defendant thought, well, this kid, she just hasn't had enough. She hasn't learned her lesson. I'm going to keep teaching it. Make no mistake about what the defendant did on September 7th, Your Honor. She may not have kicked Rory. She may not have hit her. She did something far worse. She made her teammates do it. When she called Rory back over to do that slide tackle drill, she told each and every one of her teammates, go after her. She made Rory's teammates go after her again and again and again till Rory was on the ground, unconscious, unable to breathe, and her heart failed. That's not reasonable. At the beginning of today's trial, we talked about that burden that we as the plaintiff carry, that we have to prove to you that the defendant's actions weren't reasonable, that she breached that duty of care and that breach was the cause of her death. Your Honor, that's exactly what we've done here today. Because all of those choices that the defendant made, well, that wasn't reasonable. It wasn't reasonable to send an 18-year-old out to get attacked by her teammate over and over again. It wasn't reasonable to see one of her players shaking, wheezing, bent over, and not even bother to ask if she was okay. Not once did Coach Taylor stop and ask Rory if she needed anything, if she needed water or medical attention, or hey, just a break for a few minutes. She tortured her for hours. Then Rory suffered a heat stroke. Her body shut down. It just couldn't take it anymore. And the defense wants to tell you that it was cocaine that killed Rory. Make no mistake about what they're trying to do, Your Honor. They're trying to shift blame to a high schooler. We know who was responsible for what happened to Rory on September 7th, 2018. Make no mistake about who controlled that field and who made the choice to punish Rory. Because of the defendant's choices, Rory Street paid the ultimate consequence. That's why you have to find the defendant you have to find the defendant, Reese Taylor, liable. Thank you.
Defense?
Yes, Your Honor. May I just ask how much time I have remaining?
About 18 and a half minutes or so.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Right.
We agree. Miss Street died at an all too young age. Nothing that we've said throughout this trial minimizes the sadness that her loss has brought to her family or her friends, to her teammate, or even to her coaches. We don't dispute that she died from heat exhaustion. We don't dispute that she died during a soccer practice. We do not even dispute that Coach Taylor could have acted differently on September 7th, 2018. But what the evidence has shown in this case is that Coach Taylor is not responsible for Miss Street's death, because Miss Street was keeping a secret. And that secret was her silent killer. Because coursing through her veins the day she went out on that soccer field was cocaine, an illegal street drug that affected her body that day by making the heat worse, by making the effects of that heat worse. And that secret, coupled with the heat, the exertion that she was going through at that practice, that caused Miss Street to pass away far too quickly, not Coach Taylor. Now, the plaintiff had the burden of proof in today's trial. They had to prove to you not only that Coach Taylor owed Miss Street a duty, but that he had to act with ordinary care and that his conduct had to be the proximate cause of her tragic death. Now, it's that last issue that we take hold of here, that proximate cause issue, Your Honor. Because in order to be the proximate cause of Miss Street's death in this case, Coach Taylor had to be able to foresee that her athlete would die or suffer similar harm that afternoon. What she couldn't see, that use of cocaine, she could not know. And this becomes clear when you reconsider those three big facts I brought up at the start of trial today. First, the secret. Second, the effect. And third, the silence. So let's revisit that first point, her secret. Now, the cause of Rory Street's death, it didn't start on that soccer field. It didn't start during the Burma Road drill that she was running that afternoon. It didn't start during that slide tackle drill. It started before she ever left the locker room, before she'd even laced up her cleats. It started when she took cocaine that afternoon, something that she kept secret and didn't share with anyone. She didn't tell one soul, making it impossible for Coach Taylor to know that day when his star soccer player, his superhuman athlete, was at heightened risk for heat stroke. Now, you heard today, Rory Street was, by all accounts, a great kid. Nothing that Miss Street ever did led her coach to think that she would be troubled. Nothing led her coach to believe that Miss Street would abuse those drugs. Nothing about what she did or put into her body that day was foreseeable to Coach Taylor. And that's why Coach Taylor treated her that day just like she would any other day. She made her work hard and do drills because, as far as Coach Taylor knew, from what she could see, Rory Street just wasn't listening. She had no way to know about Miss Street's deadly secret. And that brings us to our second point today, the effect. Now, even 4 hours after Miss Street's death, she had a significant amount of cocaine in her system. You can see that in the expert reports today. And it was that cocaine that exacerbated everything else that was going on that afternoon to create the fatal effect that we witnessed. But you don't have to take my word for it, because we brought you the word of those experts. And our expert was a toxicologist. Now, in that expert report, you saw a portion that specifically said that death was caused, at least in part, by the use of cocaine. Cocaine causes nausea, raises body temperature, causes high blood pressure, creates a fast or irregular heartbeat. It can cause tremors, it can cause chest pain. And sadly for the plaintiff, it was that drug that ultimately caused her death. Coach Taylor couldn't know, and most definitely could not have foreseen what would have happened that day. So of course, we go to that third and final point I brought up at the start of this trial: her silence. Now, Coach Taylor admittedly pushed Miss Street hard during practice that day, maybe harder than she needed to. I told you at the beginning of this trial that you may not agree with how the coach behaved that day, but not agreeing with her conduct does not mean finding her negligent. That's why we raised what's called an affirmative defense today. As you noted during our mid-trial argument, Your Honor, here in Texas, we use a comparative negligence standard. And it's our contention that Miss Street's own conduct in taking cocaine that day is what contributed to her death. Not only that, but during the practice itself, Coach Taylor not knowing what she couldn't see made it difficult or impossible for her to know what was going to happen to Miss Street that day. Now, of course, it's not easy and it's not fun to stand here and tell you today that a teenage girl died and it's her own fault. But I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you those things. When Miss Street was on the practice field, all she had to do was ask. All she had to do was ask to take a break. All she had to do was ask for some water. And at any point, Coach Taylor would have stopped immediately and let her do those things. But the ugly truth that the plaintiff has to contend with today is that she never did ask. The coach didn't know what was going to happen. We know this is especially true when we look back at the text messages from Aubrey Saracen that were sent the very next day after Miss Street died. Now, Miss Saracen was Miss Street's best friend, and she took the stand today and had to talk about these text messages. Texts that she sent to her best friend, Wooderson. She said Rory just collapsed out of nowhere. It was just so sudden. 1 minute, Rory was sitting there, and the next minute, she was lying on the ground, dying. Of course, today, that story got a bit more context. Miss Saracen can try to contextualize those statements 2 years later, but the fact of the matter is, the day after her best friend died, the only thing she could remember was how sudden that death had been. Now, Your Honor, at the very start of this trial, opposing counsel, Ms. Sadro, she asked you to keep in mind 3 questions for this case. Who was in control? Whose choice was it? And who suffered the consequences? And those are questions that I think we, the defense, have answered. Who was in control that day? Well, it was Miss Street. Because all she had to do was speak up. All she had to do was say that she didn't feel well. All she had to do was say that she needed water or a break. Whose choice was it to stay quiet? Well, it was Miss Street's. Because if Coach Taylor had her way, had she known what Rory Street knew, she would have done everything in her power to keep that girl safe. And that third question that Ms. Sadro asked you, who suffered the consequences? That's an easy one. everyone. The plaintiff lost her daughter. Miss Street's friends, they lost the light of their life. Her teammates lost a superstar athlete, and her coach will be racked with grief about a girl who died at that practice. Now, Your Honor, I'm not going to stand here and ask you to be unreasonable. We've never held the position that Coach Taylor did nothing wrong, just that Miss Street did a few things wrong. The question you need to decide today is whether the coach's conduct was 50% or more responsible for Miss Street's death. Now, remember that there was no way for Coach Taylor to know. She had no idea that Miss Street had that deadly secret hidden. She had no idea that what would otherwise be normal exertion would lead to Miss Street passing away. It was that secret, the effect, that silence, the 60 nanograms of cocaine that were in her bloodstream that ultimately caused her death. And because there are 60 nanograms of cocaine in her bloodstream, every single one of them increased her own chance of heat stroke, which is why we accept that you may find some responsibility on behalf of the defendant, but we ask that you find 60% responsibility on behalf of Miss Street and find the defendant not liable. Thank you.
If you have 45 seconds remaining.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court. The only medical doctor in this case told you Rory didn't die from cocaine use. She died from a heat stroke. Whose choices caused that heat stroke? Whose choices caused Rory to run a drill until she was passed out? The effect of the defendant's punishment is that Rory is silent forever. But for the defendant's actions, Rory would still be alive. Find the defendant liable. Thank you.
All right. As to you scoring judges, you need to fill out your ballots, of course, and I think you're supposed to send them back to Little Robert Little. And but I think you all got instructions on that. I wasn't exactly told. I am told that just like when we do them here, we have to wait until I get an all clear that the ballots have been properly submitted. So I'll ask that you scoring judges, you're welcome to come back on or ever how you'd like to do it. But I ask that you do stay with us until I come back and give you the all clear. Of course, this year we've been told we're not going to give any critiques during these stages, and so we will abide by that. When you have all tendered your ballots, if you wouldn't mind coming on and at least telling me you've sent it in, so I can then go find Robert and make sure that he knows that they're coming.